you give us a hard time for being white, and being American, and being in control.
Oh, God, I love being white. I really do. Seriously, if you're not white, you're missing out, because this shit is thoroughly good. But let me be clear, by the way. I'm not saying that white people are better. I'm saying that being white is clearly better. Who could even argue? If it was an option, I would re-up every year. Oh, yeah, I'll take white again. Absolutely. I've been enjoying that. I'm going to stick with white. Thank you. Here's how great it is to be white. I could get in a time machine and go to any time, and it would be fucking awesome when I get there. That is exclusively a white privilege. Black people can't fuck with time machines. A black guy in a time machine is like, hey, anything before 1980? No, thank you. I don't want to go. But I can go to any time. The year 2? I don't even know what's happening then. But I know when I get there, welcome, we have a table right here for you, sir. Oh, thank you. Oh, it's lovely here in the year 2. I can go to any time. In the past, I don't want to go to the future and find out what happens to white people, because we're going to pay hard for this shit. You got to know that. We're not going to just fall from number 1 to 2. They're going to hold us down and fuck us in the ass forever. And we totally deserve it. But for now, whee! Now, if you're white and you don't admit that it's great, you're an asshole.
It's an idea that a friend of mine had, that racism was a worldwide behavioral system for the maintenance of white supremacy by a small minority of people. I put those ideas together with what we know about genetics, what we know about the condition of skin whiteness itself. The condition of skin whiteness is the genetic inability to produce skin pigment called melanin. This is a genetic recessive trait. It is a genetic deficiency state, not as defined by Francis Welsing, but defined by geneticists and dermatologists, that the inability to produce the skin pigment of melanin or melanin pigment is described as albinism. And I think that white people, even though most white people are not consciously understanding their problem in genetics, they are certainly aware that they are genetically dominated by people of color. That's why it was a statement, one drop of black blood makes you black, because people of color have the genetic capacity to annihilate white people. And so unless white people control the reproductivity of people of color, then we can postulate that perhaps one day there won't be any white people. And I think that the very survival of white people necessitates that they project genetic inferiority on people of color, because it is they who really are aware that they are genetic recessive and perhaps genetically inferior to people of color. And I am not saying this to call the condition of skin whiteness to say, well, no, white people are inferior. I'm not saying it for that purpose, but I think that it is of prime importance for the majority of people in the world to understand why it is that white people have to, the effective majority, large numbers of white people, have to move in a hostile, in an aggressive way against people of color, and have to constantly focus on it's you who's genetically inferior, because they realize that there's something wrong with their genetic status. Now,
may I take a call?
Oh, sure,
all
please.
Right. Let me, so that, because we have a number of calls, and we'll see what the public wants to find out also. Just 1 second. Hello, go ahead, please. You're on Black Journal.
Thank you. I would like to ask a question. Why does the doctor feel that his theory, Dr. Shockley, why did you feel that your theory is correct?
Well, let me say that's a long question. Let me point out one aspect. I mean, it's a question that calls for a very long answer. I think I might just at this point say that in a time like 1 hour, we may expose a problem and encourage thinking about it, and this is a very valuable thing. But to cover either Dr. Welsing's views or mine, and let me say here are, just to show that these things exist, is a pamphlet that she was good enough to give me some time ago.
This one's upside down.
Well, that one's upside down.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Right.
And this is one of my own. It's actually a collection of a debate.
The imperatives of ethnic education is yours.
This is the issue of the journal. Mine was, the title of my paper is somewhat different from this, but I want to say that speaking for myself, if people would like to write to me at Stanford University, I have a post box there, Post Box S, which is the same as Shockley and Stanford. I will try to supply more information, and I'm sure Dr. Welsing will say what she can do about making, telling people how to reach her pamphlet. Okay. But now let me say this chart that I held up a moment ago is very important in respect to this question of why I think there may be what proves a basic difference. But I'm going to say that if there were not a basic difference in intellectual capacity in the past, there probably will be a basic difference between black and white intellectual capacity in the future, simply because of the reproduction patterns. And these are Census Bureau data, and this is the most threatening aspect. And what it indicates is that for the black women of the lowest intellectual social class, which are rural farm women, generally the education is least, the average number of children is 5.4. For women with college degrees, it's 1.9. And so this is definitely unfavorable. It is reproducing far more at the bottom end and not enough to keep even at the top end.
Dr. Shockley, can
for
you
whites,
explain?
let me just finish this. For whites, the numbers are also in this direction, but nowhere nearly as severe.
Dr. Shockley, I think that in all fairness, you should explain to the audience why it is that you have, first of all, you have a very large segment of the black population who are on farms, who are deprived in cities. Why don't you explain at the time that you're showing this, who is keeping black people in a situation like they're in? I mean, it could be, you could turn it around the other way, where you could have very large numbers of black people who are exposed to educational opportunities like white people, who are exposed to housing, who are exposed to health facilities. Why don't you explain that at the same time that you put figures like that?
I'm sure you would explain it,
no, but
Dr.
I think
Welsing,
it's important
but
in
one must say first things first.
Mm-hmm.
And you've raised the basic question there, and that is whether the disadvantages are primarily a lack of opportunity or whether they are primarily a basic genetic difference. And let me mention one thing, which is that in certain areas there is no doubt about black superiority. Blacks are superior in visual acuity, and they're superior in a systematic way. Now, I don't expect that people will understand the details of this, but I simply want to show that quantitative work can be done. This happens to be a research job of my own. And what it shows, because these points that you see here lie on a line, which is not the central line, but they lie systematically on a line, what it says is that so far as visual acuity is concerned, blacks are systematically better than whites. It's as if their bell-shaped curve, their distribution curve, were pushed upwards compared to whites for visual acuity, or at least for the avoidance of bad eyesight, such that if the same shift occurred for IQ, it would mean that the average IQ distribution would be up by 9 points rather than down by about 15 points, which is the typical average.
Dr. Shockley, visual acuity is probably something that the system of white supremacy has not necessarily seen the need to affect the environment that black people are in so that it will alter the fact that they have visual acuity that is superior to whites. The fact of visual acuity is not attacked in the same way as educational opportunity and job performance is attacked. And I think that
it's evidence for a genetic difference, in my
you see what I'm saying? There might be many, many more genetic differences where people of color appear superior. So Dr. Shockley, I am convinced that Dr. Shockley believes that he is perhaps elevating science with all of his charts and all of his figures, but he doesn't understand the things that propel him as a white individual in a social system that has programmed him throughout his life and programmed large numbers of people like him to focus on the genetics of people of color in such a way as to destroy people of color.
I would like to ask a question, and Dr. Shockley, if you could answer it yes or no, I would appreciate it. Do you believe that black people are inferior in intelligence because of their heredity?
I have a standard statement. It is not yes or no. It's memorized. I say it at the same time every time, I think. What I say is this. My research leads me, and it's a tragic conclusion, really. My research leads me inescapably to the opinion that the major cause of the American Negro's intellectual and social deficits is hereditary and racially genetic in origin, and thus not remediable to a major degree by practical improvements in environment.
First, I think that there is no question that for some people who are white in the system of white supremacy, that the fear of genetic annihilation is among the reasons, I'm not going to say it's the only one or even the most important one, but among the reasons why at a conscious or perhaps subconscious level they fear that, and that may be one of the reasons why they manifest white supremacist behavior.
African American people have been constantly looking for the rules in America. Our whole experience here, we want to know what are the rules to be accepted by the dominant society, what are the rules to not experience racism in America. And every time we learn one rule, we're told those rules don't apply and there's another rule. When African Americans were first dropped off from the slave ships, we said, okay, what do we need to do to be accepted by the dominant society? We were told, well, if you change your name from those African names, we'll accept you then. So African people said, okay, we'll change our names. Can we be accepted? They said, well, no, not quite, because now you're using that voodoo and that African religion. If you take on our religion, then we'll accept you. So black people said, well, that's not a problem. I mean, we're familiar with Christianity because we have a version of that in Africa. The whole European Jesus thing, that's a new thing for us. But if you'll accept us and you'll lay off the racism, no problem. We'll be better Christians than you. Can we be accepted? The dominant society said, well, no, not quite, because now that African voodoo is still there, so maybe if you weren't so lazy, we'll accept you. So black people said, okay, well, we're slaves. Nobody works harder than a slave. We pick all this cotton, we do all this work. Nobody works harder than us. Can we be accepted? So the dominant society said, well, no, because now slavery is over and we don't need your work no more. So black people said, okay, well, how about hiring us since we have all the skills? The dominant society said, well, no, not quite, because we have white-only unions, so we don't need that. So African-American people said, okay, well, look, how about we just build our own communities? We'll build our Tulsa, Oklahomas, our Central Avenues in Los Angeles. We'll build our own prosperous communities, and we'll just leave you be. How about that? The dominant society said, well, no, you can't do that because now you're making a little more money than us and now you're becoming a threat, so we're going to burn those little communities down. So black people said, okay, how about this? We'll work for you, just hire us, we'll keep our heads up, we'll have dignity, will you accept us? The dominant society said, well, no, because you're being uppity now. We don't want uppity black folks. So black people said, okay, well, how about this? We'll just shuck and jive. We'll be entertainment for you. We'll tap dance, skin and grin, coon, do whatever. Can we be accepted? The dominant society said, well, we love the entertainment part of you, but we can't really respect that, so we won't accept you. So black people said, well, we'll just drop out completely. We won't even try to be accepted by you. We'll just hang out on the corner. We won't even try to become part of the dominant society. We'll just hang out in front of the liquor store. If we see something we like, we'll take it. We'll just do our thing. The dominant society said, well, no, you do that, we're going to arrest you. So black people said, okay, well, how about we just go in the house? We'll just get crumbs from you. We'll just stay in the house and watch TV because that way we can escape racism. But the thing is, when you look at television, what do you see? Negative image, negative image, negative image, negative image of African American people. So the bottom line is there are no rules for the dominant society to accept black people as a whole. All the rules are there to keep you marginalized. And that brings us to rule number one. Keep people confused as to what racism is.
How can me, this white man, take responsibility for things that have happened, that are going on now? And that is a burden that I can't bear. I can't do that.
I will never trust you because your people did that. They did that.
Yes, this is our history, okay? I did not do any of this shit. I want to cross the room. I want to cross that line. But in the meantime, I don't want to have to feel guilty about trying that.
You have to. You have to inherit the guilt. You have to inherit the shame.
The problem is, for a black man, you can't just blend in. It's impossible.
You don't realize what's going on all around you, even though you don't feel as though you're a prejudiced person yourself. It brought a lot of things out, you know, that make you realize maybe in some instances you really are.
I chose Carol as my partner because she's one of the people that if I was normally walking down the street would clasp their purse and avoid me. And that's one of the problems that I think are out there in society, is that we're viewed wrong. We're showed on television wrong. The images that have been portrayed by us have been all negative. And I wanted her to see that there are better people out there, and this was an opportunity for her to get that experience.
It's like for black males, it's every day. We're not making this up. It's every day. I have no chance, excuse my language, in hell to make it in this country.
What happens as a white woman, nobody tells me I'm better. They tell me I'm normal, and there are people who are less. It takes so much work and so much digging in one's psyche to get it, that if I'm being taught some people are worse, oh my God, that means I'm being told that I'm better.
I'm afraid of walking down the street and white people walking toward me, but they say they're afraid of me. You know, I'm afraid of them. What are you gonna do? Like, what? I don't want to.
What are you gonna say?
What are you gonna say? You know,
and I know I'm not gonna be believed, so it
Right.
don't even matter.
So
all you gotta do is make up a story. That's
Right.
how much power you have. You can
Right.
make up a story, and
it'll
that's
be,
my
and
life.
it'll be totally believed.
That's my life. In the blink of an eye, it's extinguished because that one white person just made up a story.
They can have a videotape of you beating the shit out of Will, and the question is, well, what was Will doing?
To provoke him. When you talk about your experiences, you only talk about what you can't do, you know, what you don't feel. But you feel something.
As me, not as a white person, but as me.
No, as a white person.
As a white person.
As a white person.
As a white man.
As a white male, I tried to open up, and then I was shut down. I know I'm shut down.
But you're not. That's what I'm trying to say. It's numbness. You know what I mean? Like, you're not shut down. This is who you are as a person. You know, you have lost a piece of yourself as a human being.
Oh my God, I mean, it's like we hear this and we're like, yeah, I can relate. But the emotional disconnect is because there's still the white racism that says you are not human.
The most aggressive things that I've ever experienced at my school happened when I was in the company of friends of color. The only time I was not allowed on my campus was with a friend of color. Like, that was rage. That was rage.
Sometimes I don't want to be compassionate. Sometimes I just want to say that at the end of the day, you're a white man in this country. And that gives you a lot of things that I don't have.
Tell him what you will not have, but he will.
A break. You have that choice, that ability to take a day off.
I was going to a party over in Kentucky and I got lost. So I stopped at this bar and I asked for directions, and this guy gave me directions. And I noticed in his hand he had a knife, and he had the knife out, and that knife was about this long.
We're mad because you want a little give and take, and I want to give you give and take, but all they did was take, so I can't. I have to stand up for my people and take. And so I feel like I got to take a little extra slice first off. And if that means that you shed an extra tear, and that means you losing a night of sleep, you know, so be it. I know that men look just like me 300 years ago. Went through it every night. Afraid to wake up in the morning. Afraid to wake up in the morning. I can't trust you. I can't let my mom down. I can't let my grandma down. It's the same. I didn't choose black skin. You didn't choose white skin, but we got it. So this is what we got to do. You got to work. And not have encouragement and not have me stand up for you around other black people, you know, and not have me correct you and not have me do any of these things for you, because you got to do all the work. You know, they say, oh, people, blacks are hurting themselves. No. Whites are getting hurt too.
To me, when I hear it from a white person, it means, why can't we all just pretend to be white people? I'll pretend you're a white person, and then you can pretend to be white. Why don't you eat what I eat? Why don't you drink what I drink? Why don't you think like I think? Why don't you feel like I feel?
I'm afraid with these feelings, there will be no progress and no change in racism. The fear of color will remain. The gap isn't being bridged here.
Because you're not allowed to be a black man in corporate America. Walk through some halls with some pride, you're gonna scare some people. Show that you have some intelligence, you scare people.
Sure, you're right.
You gotta shuffle.
Ooh.